The RSI Apollo was supposed to be a one-of-a-kind battlefield triage, behind enemy lines medical clinic, and a gateway to deep medical gameplay. Today, it's a larger Cutlass Red with an unsure future, and CIG just released a new, more useful, and in many situations more practical ship in the same chassis. But it's not the same chassis. And it's sad, honestly. I feel for the medics in the current game. Just like the Valkyrie, the Mantis, and Prowler before, the Apollo enters this spaceship limbo, where its future support and viability may depend on uncertain gameplay, and CIG seemingly is moving on with a younger model. Today, we're going to take a look at the new RSI Hermes, why it actually feels like the right use for this ship, and why that's kind of a disaster. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. The RSI Hermes is a cargo hauling ship, and a pretty big one at that. Sitting basically in the RSI Apollo chassis at about 73 meters in length, it's a larger, medium ship. It carries 288 SCU of cargo, making it a direct competitor to the Starlancer Max, carrying 224 at 83 meters long. So it's already showing strength in numbers at a smaller size, but the Starlancer Max will be easier to load. The Hermes maintains only a tight opening in the back for loading and unloading. I found that it's usable for one box at a time, likely with one on the tractor beam and one organizing in the back, but for larger scale jobs this will not meet the need as well as the Starlancer Max, or even the smaller Raft, which also can load its cargo from the outside. This philosophy is almost the exact opposite of the genius move that was the Ironclad, explained by Ben Curtis 2 years ago. Here.
Little tight entrances to cargo ships doesn't necessarily lend itself to when you're out in deep space and you're trying to quickly move some cargo from one person's ship into your ship. Really, you want as much kind of access to be able to do that as you possibly can. So by having this kind of much larger opening on top of the ship, it allows us to kind of bring cargo in much easier.
While I am all for vehicle shortcomings, and I get it, this is too obviously meant to restrict vehicle access. I put this to the test myself, and the Ursa is mere inches away from fitting into the ship. I don't think it's a great way of doing the balance, and right off the bat I think this is the main shortcoming of an otherwise surprisingly enticing ship. The ship carries a dual size 4 turret up top, with 2 size 4 pilot controlled guns in the front, and that turret can be slave to the pilot if nobody's controlling it. Along with 4 size 2 shields, this thing can actually defend itself fairly well in combat situations. It also has a higher hull health than the Apollo, so it's kind of meant to be an armored transport. I'm sure MSR owners are feeling a little bit snubbed by the Blockade Runner nod during its Behind the Ships episode.
Hermes is sort of internally often referred to as a sort of blockade runner.
It also has a rail-mounted tractor beam that can move through the cargo bay to help you move things around, and it actually works pretty well once you get the hang of it. You can see this in my gameplay video on the other channel that'll link down below. The ship is also just really pretty, and that's kind of the thing. The Apollo was one of the best looking ships in Star Citizen in my opinion, and I always imagined the original would make for a great exploration vessel, which only really calls for several SCU of storage, usually. But we'll never get that original 43-meter ship, with its remote-controlled drones and its medical beds. It exploded in size before they were able to get it into the game due to medical gameplay changing after the original concept was made in 2017, and CIG realizing they simply could not ship the vision that they once had for medics. Or like what was said behind the ships, cause people like the ship but not the medical gameplay we currently have.
A lot of people have said that they love the Apollo's look but don't like the medical gameplay, so this really is the ship for those people.
Which, yeah. This has been a sore spot I think many have been avoiding talking about since the Apollo release, and we still haven't even seen NPC rescue missions in the game. There's almost no medical gameplay outside of combat in the moment. While these things may come sometime in the future, the Hermes releasing only emphasizes how much better suited this ship at this size is for cargo hauling, a much better use for the space, and how much they kind of dropped the ball with the Apollo for now. We've gone over why these variant ships are good for the CIG to keep making. That video's down below, but this honestly feels like making the best out of a bad situation with the Apollo, and while I do enjoy the Hermes and I think it has a place, I don't like it how it came to that place. Now, it could also be good for the older Apollo, lending more popularity to a chassis that may have otherwise withered as just a medical ship. But they don't share the same paints, so they require different workloads from the devs to even update, and you're going to have to buy 2 different paints if you want both ships in the same color. If the Apollo doesn't find a good use, I worry this will only emphasize its awkward position and be kind of a bad look for the company. I personally didn't want to love the Hermes, and I think it has its problems. It annoys me how it came to be, and it makes more sense for this whole thing to just be a modular mini galaxy. But after playing with this ship for a few hours, I have ended up liking it more than I expected. It's like the Spirit M1 that I always wanted, but larger. A basic hallway hauler with a cockpit and a cargo bay, a tractor beam, some armor, a defensive turret, and space for a friend. It being twice the size of the C1 just makes it the Super Spirit, I guess, but it hits the same goal I wanted one for. And I think it'll make for a solid medium cargo and small vehicle transport. I think a lot of us wanted a variant from the Apollo, and this actually makes quite a bit of sense for one. I don't necessarily think variants of ships are inherently bad, but with the quicker release of ships recently, I do think there are some bad habits forming. Let's talk about CIG's long-term growing ship problem here. I've talked about CIG's ship problem a lot, as recently as just a few months ago, and while I used to think it was their backlog, then I thought it was their gold standard updates, now I'm starting to feel like it could be ship bloat. I know, not a hot take. But the last year has seen an explosion in variants. The Atlas Geo, the Guardian MX, Raven Firebird, Peregrine, Meteor, Asgard, Prowler Utility, Terrapin Medic, and now the Apollo. This trend has only increased since it first started with the Sabre Firebird, and with more than 24 ships planned to release in 2026, I think it might continue. Again, variants aren't a bad thing. Sometimes a ship fits other gameplay better than what it was made for. Sometimes players present a clear use case that a manufacturer should take the hint from. And it makes sense for manufacturers to use the same chassis for different activities if it fits and the chassis is popular. And it's safe to say CIG is choosing ships whose gameplay doesn't exist yet to use in gameplay that does. The Terrapin, the Prowler, the Mantis, the Raven, the Apollo. Now the Hermes actually landing so well as a cargo ship emphasizes just how ridiculous the size increase to the Apollo was. Because a 42-meter long ambulance makes sense, just like a 73-meter long medium cargo hauler does. But when you flip those dimensions, less so. And I don't know how I feel about a ship being made better at its own gameplay due to the predecessor's failure. Then again, I am a Terrapin fan. So after all this rambling, what is the problem? Well, of course, the problem is alpha. CIG needs to release ships to fund the game because they bit off more than was chewable in a reasonable amount of time. And well, Squadron 42 still hasn't released. It is all known. Variants are fairly easy to make and thus effectively fund the game while adding more functionality and content for players, especially when they're using game loops that actually exist. The ships without existing gameplay really aren't serving too much of a purpose other than gathering dust and tech debt. So reborn into gameplay loops that actually work at the moment, they are very helpful. But does this mean the original ships have a fraction less reason to be quickly updated with useful gameplay in the future, or slotted into the overall game as smoothly? I don't know, and even though I do like the ship, I do think this is something everybody playing Star Citizen should keep an eye on. Anybody who watched the Apollo through development could see something went wrong with it. We all know CIG isn't perfect, and funding a project like this is going to come with some mistakes and missed spots. And I do actually think these original less popular models can in some instances benefit from new more popular variants bringing dev and player attention. But this can balloon, and this is not the first pseudo variant we are seeing that uses different cosmetics and dev pipelines. CIG are already planning ships for 2027 right now, no doubt. I really hope, as they do though, they consider how gameplay and ships are being advertised versus what's actually possible now or in the future, so that when we have future Apollo situations, it's because that was always the plan, rather than some silver lining after years of speculation. I know this video may feel negative, but honestly it comes from a place of love and disappointment for the Apollo. I love the ship and always hoped there would be a variant, but the way this all happened, especially just months after the Apollo's disappointing launch, it just doesn't feel quite right. But 4.6 overall does. If you want to see everything else that was in the patch I'm actually excited for, understand why it's called 4.6, and see what's coming up in the next few months, check out this video down below. Otherwise, I hope you learned something new from this video. Thanks for watching till the end, and I'll catch you in the next.